Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Boulderstone, and we're going to talk about the Chinese drama Return of Condor Heroes. This is a 41-episode television series that is based off of the second in the classic Condor Heroes trilogy by Louis Cha. This version stars Li Yufei, the woman who plays Mulan in the upcoming Disney movie, Huang Xiaoming as Yang Guo, Jessie Meng as Li Mocho, and she has a role much later in the series, but she's a big actress now. So Yang Mi plays Hua Zhang, who becomes an important character later in the story, but we won't be dealing with her for a while. And so today, me and Adam are going over episodes 1 and 2, and we're going to go, sort of bit by bit through it. But first, I just wanted to get Adam's initial response to the series. Initial impressions, basically.
Yeah, it's a very nice series. I mean, it's video as opposed to film, but it's still very striking in its look. I'm picking up on it very easily so far. I'm not having any trouble following the plot. I've watched the Brave Archer movies, which cover the original Legend of Condor Heroes, so I have some background, but I haven't read either of the corresponding books, and I'm still not having any issue with following it. And it's moving very briskly. I'm really into this show so far.
And yeah, so this was one of my first introductions to the story. So I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start with this one. But I also think it's very atmospheric, and it almost has. Would you say it has a little bit of a horror movie vibe to it somehow? There's like a darkness that's in this one that.
Yeah, there's a lot of creepiness to elements of it. Definitely, yeah, it definitely has the horror movie vibe going in parts. I mean, if nothing else, it opens with the scene with the bloody palms and stuff, yeah, which sets a dark tone.
and the opening theme music, I think, really sort of helps set the stage for this show. It's got a really great song. Called, I think it's got a few different names, but I think it's Unrivaled, sung by Jane Zhang, who is a really tremendous singer. But I don't know, it just is like, I don't know how I would describe the music, but it definitely sort of grabs your attention and kind of gets you ready for the sort of storyline and atmosphere that you're about to experience.
Yeah, well, it's a very long credit sequence, but when I watched the second episode, I wasn't like, "Oh, I'm going to skip through this." It's still it's a nice gateway into the episode, even though it's quite long for what credit sequences are like these days.
Well, with these Chinese dramas, I find that the opening theme song is super important for preparing my mind. I mean, I might be just more focused on that than other people because I do tend to linger on the musical elements of a movie or show. But if the music is wrong from the beginning, I just can't get into a series, even if it's a good series. If the music is right, I'll enjoy a bad series more than I would otherwise. And if it's a great series, it really just sort of brings it up to the level of. I really need the music to just to kind of, I don't know. I guess I respond very strongly to it. But the show opens with the appearance of Li Mocho, who's the big villain in the series, and she arrives at Lu family manor, and she leaves these bloody palm prints, and she ends up killing the brother of her former lover. Her former lover is Lu Zhan Yuan, and he married a woman named, I think her name was He Yuan Jun, and so she's now coming for revenge. She's decided to just murder the whole family, and the family have there are two girls living there. One of them is the daughter of Lu Zhanyuan, and the other one is, I think, his niece. And these characters become important later in the show, but for right now they're just little kids. And they send them off with one of the servants and sort of rip up a handkerchief and divide it between them. And the handkerchief used to belong to Li Mochu, so they feel that once she sees it, she might avoid or refrain harming them. And so Li Mochu arrives and she kills the the husband and wife that are residing at the manor. And so, Adam, what was your initial impression of this scene?
It just pulls you in pretty quickly. I mean, it sets up this threat. They have to get the kids out. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed this. Had some nice action to it with the fight, even though it was pretty one-sided. And no, it set up Lee Mucho as a serious threat in the story.
Yeah, she's really badass at the beginning. She's one of the most powerful characters at the start of the series. In the book, she sings when she arrives. That's sort of one of her signature things that she does.
You mentioned that to me ahead of time. I was kind of like hoping we get that, but no, that I think that actually would have enhanced it. But it was still very effective.
Well, it's something that might not work as well in a medium like this too. It can really sort of go a number of different directions.
It could. I would probably like it, but I could see other people not.
Yeah, exactly. I think they end up. So she ends up, basically she came to murder her former lover and his wife, but they had already died, and so she decides to get revenge against everybody, and she kills them, and she kills his brother, and I think another brother or a servant takes the children out into the wilderness, and there they bump into. It kind of gets complicated. They bump into a bunch of people. So Lee Mocho kills the man who's helping the two girls escape, and the two girls are Lu Wu Shuang and Cheng Ying, and again, these become important characters later in the story. But Huang Yaoshi shows up, who you might remember, Adam, from Brave Archer as the master of Plum Blossom Island, and he's quite old at this point, but he helps them he sort of helps sort of fend off Lee Mocho, but she's able to abduct one of the girls, and I think Lu Shang is the one who gets abducted, and but he saves the other, and also Yang Guo is there, and we hear Guo Jing call Yang Guo's name, and then we go to the next scene where Yang Guo is being taken to Tuanzhen sect, and I should say this opening scene, it takes a lot of liberties. There are characters missing that should be here, and it's kind of a shame because these characters still become important in the series later on, and it would kind of make more sense if you knew the connective tissue. But
they're in which scene? They're in the
in the wilderness scene, in
the wilderness scene. Okay.
Manor. There's some other characters that are involved here that are important to the story, but I can understand why they sort of glossed over it, because there is a lot to absorb.
Yeah, introducing too many characters real early in the series can be confusing.
And they gloss over Yang Guo's experience at Plum Blossom Island, and I'm sorry, Peach Blossom Island,
yeah,
and all the experiences he had with the Wu brothers and everybody. But they advance to the next sequence, which is Yang Guo going with Guo Jing to Tuanzhen sect, and when they arrive, Tuanzhen sect is under attack. There's a guy named Huadu, who we later learn, who's a very important villain later in the story, but I think all we learn right now is that he's a disciple of Reverend Jin Lun, and he's there with, I believe, his fellow disciple De Erba, who, keep an eye on De Erba. He is a breakthrough character in this.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure on the motivations of Huodu and all of that during this. I mean, I wasn't confused exactly, but I never quite picked up on it.
So what's going on is Lee Mocho has spread this rumor through the martial world that Jiaolong Nu, the woman who resides at Ancient Tomb Sect, who's her martial sister, she has said that she's willing to marry anybody who can beat her in combat, or something to that effect. And Jiaolong Nu is supposed to be very beautiful. In the book, the author literally ranks every female character in a hierarchy of beauty, and Jiaolong Nu is at the top. And so
Okay.
so Huadu is here because he wants to marry her. And so, but they have to get through Chuanzhen sect because they're neighbors, and so that's why they're attacking Chuanzhen sect.
Gotcha.
And that's why they call Guojing a pervert when he shows up, because they think he's just somebody else showing up to
I
get with
didn't. Yeah,
Xiao
I
Long.
didn't pick up on that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This all makes perfect sense now.
A
Yeah.
lot happens, and it's kind of all sort of just, it's just sort of thrown in there. Like, Guojing is like, what did they just
Yeah.
call me? And Yang goes like, oh, he called you a pervert. And
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot going on, so it's not a case like there were reports going, I have no idea what's going on. There are always things I knew what was going on, so the things I didn't get just kind of like flew past me, you know.
and we get and
But
we get and we get a huge fight scene with Guo Jing and the
yeah,
Tianzhen Taoists who are doing theing formations. So we get the Big Dipper formation, and we get the seven
yeah,
stars toward the moon. And this is the stuff that's like you don't always see it in the movies because it's very hard to but they get these really elaborate formations in these stories. And so the guys are all sort of moving around in a circle, and they're forming like a yin yang type pattern with their movements, but they're circling around Guojing and like trapping him in as they do it. And it just looks spectacular for a TV show. I thought
yeah.
it was really good.
Well, yeah, this being my first TV show I've watched with Wuxia, it's like I was like, okay, well, I had my expectations a little lower. I'm like, what's this going to look like? And this sequence, I was like, okay, this is going to be some impressive stuff in here. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because what a lot of people will sort of, their assumption will be built off the old Shaw Brothers movies, and the thing that
Yeah.
sometimes people don't realize is those are more grounded than a lot of the wuxia genre really is, because that was the aim, and they were trying to create a more realistic. It was called the New School of Wuxia, and they were going for like a more bloody and realistic approach. And you don't start seeing some of the more grandiose stuff until the 80s and 90s again. But if you read the books, especially the Condor Heroes stuff, there's some, it never gets into like, proper fantasy or anything like that. But the martial abilities are truly, above what a normal person could do. They're very much at the heroic level of ability. And you totally see that in this soap. You see it even before this when Li Mochu impales somebody with her fly whisk.
Yeah.
You can't do that in real life. You just can't. You see this throughout the story. I think in the books they called it. It's like it's an internal energy thing where you're able to turn something that is soft into something that is hard. So you take like a piece of fabric,
Okay.
and you can turn it into a weapon by making it hard enough to strike. And
Yeah, the fabric weaponry thing was something I was going to ask you about actually. So that
yeah,
I was like, is there
in
something
this
I'm missing?
in this book. That's how it's described. In every book I've encountered, what you tend to find is that the writer will often explain things a little differently or have their own particular take. But Louis Cha is very specific in the story. And I'm sure I'm not. There's a lot that I'm probably glossing over because they're literally you could write a book just collecting all the different rules about kung fu that he lays out in because he throws them in there constantly throughout the text. So, anyways, there's this big battle, and during the battle, Yang Guo gets abducted by one of the priests who takes him to the kitchen for some reason, and he has an extended sort of fight. But what you really get from that scene is just the sense that Yang Guo is this indomitable spirit of rebelliousness that cannot be crushed, and the more force you use to crush it, the more he resists. That seems to be a deeply embedded character trait with him. And
Yeah, as a scene that seems more there for character purposes than plot purposes. Plot wise, doesn't really go anywhere. Character, like, okay, I get this young Guo guy now.
it becomes important in the second episode when he starts falling under the influence of Zhao Long Nu, and you're sort of seeing this like, wait, why is he suddenly able to adhere to rules and discipline under these circumstances, but not when he's dealing with the Taoists? And I think again, it's because of the sort of the softer methods that the ancient tomb sect is taking.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and I think another important thing to mention here is that's really unique about the story, and I think that it's the thing that really leapt up at me, even though I actually came to the Condor Heroes trilogy through Return of Condor Heroes. It was my first exposure to the story, so I didn't know the backstory, and I was learning it
Okay.
as the story was unfolding. But the key thing that you sort of that sort of leaps out when you understand it is that Yangor is the son of the villain of the last story, and that's that. I don't know. That's a really cool choice to make for your
It
second book.
is.
Like they could have easily said, well, we're going to have Guo Jing and Huang Rong's progeny be the focus of the story, but they choose to take the guy who was the bad guy, and so much of the story, as you're probably getting a sense of, is Yangua trying to understand why everybody hates his father, because people are being so vague about what happened. It's not clearly stated what his father did. He just knows that nobody likes him, and so he sort of is left to build up an image in his own head of his dad. So, anyways, we get there's a little bit of a time skip, and we get to after the battle where sort of things have been resolved, at least between Guo Jing and the Taoists. And I should say that there is a moment in the fight where Guo Jing sort of is alerted to what's actually going on, and he confronts Huadu, and he defeats him in like 3 moves or something, and Huadu leaves. And so but Guo Jing speaks with, I think it's Chui Chuji, who's the if you remember from Bay of Archer, he's the guy that showed up at the very beginning when and met the 2 brothers, that were the fathers of the main characters.
Oh, okay,
It's very early on in the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's who he was speaking to, and he explains the situation. He says, Huadu is here for Miss Long, who lives at Ancient Tomb, and they're right next to our sect, which is at Chang'an Palace, and so then we go to Prince Huadu, who has now arrived at Ancient Tomb sect. He's sort of found his way there, and Li Mochu arrives, and clearly they don't explicitly state it, but it's suggested in the book. It's explicit. She's been spreading this rumor because she wants somebody to beat Zhao Longnu so that she can get the Jade Maiden manual, basically, because this was not transmitted to her by their teacher, because she sort of went down the wrong path, and she's convinced that her teacher is biased, or was biased, toward Zhao Longnu. And so you'll learn that Li Mocho is one of these characters that just cannot admit that she's ever wrong. That she's but Zhao Longnu unleashes her bees. Her jade bees get unleashed upon everybody at the scene, and they're forced to flee. So, and the bees will come into play later on again. But they're one of Zhao Longnu's cool weapons in her arsenal. And then we get the scene where Yang Guo becomes a member of Chuanzhen sect. He clearly is not feeling the atmosphere. There's a moment of separation between him and Guo Jing, and then the rest of the episode is largely Yang Guo sort of just sort of settling in, and it's clear that he's not. There's a lecture by I think it's Mr. Zhao, Zhao Zhijing, who's like one of the senior members of the sect below all of the 7 immortals, and he's talking about the founder of the sect, and Yang Guo questions his character, and so things are not going well. And at the end of the episode ends with him pulling a trick on Lu Qingdu, the guy who had him in the kitchen, who he does not like. He pees on him at night and convinces him that he wet his bed, and it becomes a thing in the next episode. But what did you think of the first episode? And was there anything that you thought worth talking about, or?
It's like I said, I really got into this. I was into it through the whole episode. I mean, it's nice. It's nice seeing some of the returning for me characters from other series, even if there's different actors playing them. I enjoyed the casting in the show a lot. I mean, even when it was, when it was a familiar character to me with a different person, I always was on board with the casting. like Master Huang. I was like, okay. I mean, I think may have been the first recurring character we see in this, and it was nice to get him in there. I felt Guo Jing. I felt like he was an interesting interpretation of the character too. He was, just that very straightforward manner, even if it's a very different performance
Yeah.
than Alexander
Alexander
Fuchs.
Fuchs. Well, and also he's older now too, so I feel like both him and Huang Rong get like a little bit of an update in this
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
Guo Jing's still a bit of an he's still not the brightest bulb, but he's not
uh-huh.
as I feel like he's got a little bit more wisdom at this point, and so uh, and he's a respected hero too at this point. He's like one of the greatest heroes in the setting at this stage in the story. So
Sure.
but yeah, I don't know. I just love the sort of generation like stories that span generations can sometimes be very
Yeah,
hit or miss. This is a really fun, multi generational story that what I love about it is and you'll see this as the story goes on because you're going to meet historical figures in the game. I mean, not in the game, in the show,
yeah, yeah,
and it's great the way that it handles them because it sort of it pays just the right level of respect to them while also making them just like all the other characters in the story. Um, you know,
yeah.
it's one of the things and unfortunately you didn't see that in Brave Archer because they cut out the Genghis Khan character. You did see it with
Yeah.
the leader of Dali Kingdom, the T Lung character that was in it, but he's not as widely known of a historical figure, so it's not like seeing Genghis Khan. Um,
Yeah, and I would, I mean, you can go into this series cold. I think it would still be fine to go into it without anything, but I would recommend some variation of the earlier story, whether it's just the Brave Archer movies or actually reading the book. I think you're going to get more out of this series if you've
yeah,
gotten at least some of the earlier generation.
I think it's a good idea to read the book. I just feel because
Mhm.
I
Oh,
came through it this way and I sort of knew what my experience of it was. What I enjoyed was learning things piecemeal as the story unfolded. And then when I went
That's true.
back and then when I went and I and found out and read like Legends, it was it was I had more investment in all. You know what I mean? I had more reason to read it. It wasn't like and so I don't know, but everybody's different, and I think the smart thing is probably what you're saying. Read the first
Yeah,
story and then
it's
read this one, or watch a series on the first story and then watch. And if you're gonna watch it, I think that the official one for the 2006 is, I believe, the 2003 or like the 2001 Legend of Condor Heroes.
oh,
Um,
okay. So there is a series that predates this that's
Yeah, there is.
by
In
the same
fact, if I
people.
can,
Oh, okay,
if I we'll do the next episode, but maybe we should get into that because it's
sure.
linked. They do try to do them in linked series often, and so this one is
Yeah,
part
I
of a linked
might I might
series.
watch that piecemeal during between episodes of this out of curiosity because but yeah, that would be fun to see.
Yeah, a lot of people
But
like that version. So my favorite version is the one that was done in the '80s.
oh,
Uh,
okay.
uh, but I think that if you're watching this one, it's good to watch the one that it's linked to.
Yeah,
So
ultimately, I'd like to see both. So
yeah, that's the good thing about. I mean, this series all of them are good. Like I mean, not every version of Return of Condor Heroes is good, but all of the stories are good in the Condor Heroes trilogy, and so
yeah, that's it exactly. It's a good enough story that I even seeing a not the greatest interpretation would be interesting just to see how you could treat it badly.
well, I can tell you the 2014 one is generally. So I will say this: the 2014 one looks really good. It's got some
Uh-huh.
really cool effects. It has some nice. I didn't mind the action sequences or anything like that. Some of the casting is good. Some of the casting is a little bit questionable. But it just really messed with the source material in a way that it didn't feel like it's not like sometimes somebody will take the source material and mess with it and it's a good thing, like with Ashes of Time. They messed with the source material and they produced something new and exciting. This was like they messed with the source material so they could cram in other wuxia stories that had nothing to do with Return of Condor Heroes. And so I would not recommend the 2014 version, at least as your first outing. I would definitely watch this one, watch like the one from the 80s, or if you can get them from the 90s, and then watch the 2014 version.
Yeah, I think if you're adapting a movie or a TV show, it's always, if you're going to mess with it, you're going to need to mess with it in some way. But messing with it to add more stuff is always a worse idea than messing with it to put less stuff in. Yeah. I think that's almost the case. Always the case.
I agree, and this one does take liberties, but most of the liberties it sort of fixes down the road, or it's not.
Sure.
It's not like jarring if you go and read the book and you're like, what the hell. Whereas if you watch the 2014 one, you might be like, whoa, what? Well, you know, that's not in there. So anyways, in episode 2, we get Yanguo gets in trouble for the whole bedwetting thing, and Zhao Ziying, who we'll learn more about over the course of the story, but right now all we know him is sort of the senior disciple at Chuanzhen sect. He canes Yanguo, and Yanguo cries, and he tells him he's as rebellious as his father, which that line I really like, because you really get a sense of sort of the history going on there. That this other guy like knows more about his dad than he does, and he bites him, and so then he gets placed in a holding cell, and Lu Qingdu comes and demands an apology, and he Yanguo still he apologizes, but he sort of whispers his apology, and then he shouts in the guy's ear, and the guy shoves a bunch of food in his face, and then in the next scene we're told that there's going to be a competition. And this is a pretty important scene. This is where we learned earlier in the last episode that Yanguo was taught Toad Kung Fu probably by Wu Yongfeng, but they don't clearly state it. In the books, it's much more clearly addressed.
By who?
Wu Yongfeng. He was another bad guy in the first series, and he was remember in Brave Archer, the contest at Peach Blossom Island. Remember the guy with the cane with the
Yes,
that guy.
Okay.
He was the Western Venom. Yes. Not a nice guy. But by the end of the story, Huang Rong had made him insane, and so now in Return of Condor Heroes, he's just like a roaming madman. And what you don't see in this version of the story, I think you get bits of it later, but you don't see the early parts. Yanguo had an encounter with him, and he became Yanguo's like adopted father, adopted grandfather, so that they have like this, and he taught him Toad style, and so so that's one of the reasons why Huang Rong doesn't trust or like Yanguo, because she knows he learned Toad style, and she's convinced it's from Wu Yongfeng, and she doesn't like she like Huang Rong hates Wu Yongfeng, I think, more than anybody else. Like she spends a lot of the first book, shouting Wu Yongfeng, you terrible person. She just is not a fan of him. So I think it's a source of a lot of the tension, and one of the reasons why Yanguo, among many other reasons, that he has to leave Peach Blossom Island. He also, she doesn't trust him because he's his father's son, and she thinks he's going to be just as bad, and all these other things.
A lot of bad marks there.
But the important thing is he knows this Toad Kung Fu style, but he doesn't know anything else. And at Chuanzhen sect, even though he's been here for months, they only taught him theory. They haven't taught him any actual techniques. And so they just sort of send him up against this older student, and he just kind of goes out there, arms swinging, and gets the crap beat out of him. But then he just gets murderous, and what's his name? Lu Qingdu steps in and starts fighting him. And Yanguo gets mad and uses his Toad Kung Fu and just knocks him the crap on the ground. And he's out. He's out cold. And then,
so he was actually still alive, though.
I think he was still alive. I'm trying to remember that, actually.
It was ambiguous. I was like, did he just straight out murder him, or?
I'm pretty sure in the books he survived, but I could be wrong. And I think in the series he survived, but I'm sure we'll find out later. And so he knocks him the hell out, and then Yanguo flees and he runs to Ancient Tomb Sect. And, there's an extended sequence where, there's all this stuff happening on a log over a river. But ultimately what occurs is the bees get sent out and the Chuanzhen Taoists flee, and Yanguo gets stung until he passes out, and then he wakes up, and Granny Sun, this kindly old lady, is helping alleviate the sting. What you might not pick up from the series is these bees have like a really terrible venom, and so.
Yeah,
You
that
need
kind of
the
becomes apparent later when the antidote comes up, but it isn't clear at this point that it's actually poisonous.
yeah, they're you don't want to get stung by these bees. And so Granny Sung, she takes an immediate liking to Yanguo, and it's maybe not as obvious in the show because we're only into episode 2 and they haven't really been able to build up Yanguo's everybody hates me sort of thing that he has, but nobody really this is the first person like aside from his mom and maybe Uyung Fung who likes him and is doting on him and treating him like he's just a normal boy. And so, she hears his stories and his accounts of the Taoists beating him up and mistreating him, and she's like, oh, I don't want him going back there. And she goes to they just call her Miss Long at this point, but this is the Zhao Long New character, and it's the woman who she lives in the series. She lives in like a almost like a tree house inside of a cave inside of the ancient tomb, and she asks Miss Long if Yanguo can stay, and Miss Long is like, no, he has to go back. It's the rule of our... And the rule of the sect that she's invoking here is that men cannot be members of the sect. That they're not supposed to have dealings with men, really. And they're also supposed to be, like, emotionless. Like, that's why she's so cold all the time and why she doesn't respond. When Granny Sun... Spoiler, when Granny Sun dies, she says, well, why are you... it's just death. It's not anything to be moved by.
Everybody dies. Yeah. It's that's interesting about the rules there. Yeah, I picked up on her philosophy there of not getting emotional, which
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll say which makes it interesting having young Guao there, as he is pretty much all emotion.
Yeah, that's pretty much his. He's a big ball of emotions at this point, and so Granny Sun, takes him back, but you get the impression Granny Sun isn't really fully committed to this idea of returning him to the Taoists. And she offers them the antidote, and then when they suggest that it might be poison, and I should say she also tells Yanguo the history of their sect leading up to this. There's the founder of Chuanzhen is Wang Chongyong, and the founder of their sect is Lin Chaoying, and she explains that Wang Chongyong had built the tomb as a defense against the Jin, but then he lost it to their master, and she implies that he lost it in a fight. It's a much more involved thing than that, but for right now, that's So Yanguo is sort of left with the impression that the Chuanzhen school isn't all that great because their master lost to the master of Ancient Tomb, and so then she goes out, she offers them the antidote. They suggest that it might be poison, and to prove it isn't, she pours it down Yanguo's throat, and then she starts walking away. And there's an extended sort of fight chase sequence that happens as all this unfolds, and they end up sort of fighting all the way to Chuanzhen sect. And there, a character, I'm trying to remember who. I think it's Hao Detong is the master who ends up showing up, and it's not totally. It seems like an accident, but he basically he strikes her and she collapses on the ground. And she begins dying, and at this point, Zhao Long Nu arrives, and Hao Detong, is sort of making a big deal about how this was an accident, and please, I didn't intend to kill you. May your soul rest. And Zhao Long Nu is like, okay, well then kill yourself. And he sort of calls his bluff, and so he's obviously not going to kill himself. So there's a big extended fight again, and then Cui Chuji ends up arriving, and Zhao Long Nu flees. And before or in the middle of the battle, before Zhao Long Nu flees back to Ancient Tomb sect, and she takes Yanguo with her, she kneels down to Granny Sun, and Granny Sun makes her promise to take care of Yanguo forever. And so then we get...
almost this subtitle thing, but she never actually promised. in this version, at least. Unless it
Yeah,
was a
I think in
subtitle.
the book she did promise.
She does promise.
But
Okay,
and
I
in
was wondering about the ambiguity. It's
no,
like
no, no.
she listens to the request and takes it in, but
You will
I was
see
like,
in the next couple of episodes, she takes this promise very
very
literally. Yeah,
serious.
very.
I figured she would.
Yeah.
She seemed like the type that was. Like I said, I wasn't
Yeah.
doubting her sincerity. I
You
just was
you will
leaving that
be
window open in my
alarmed
head.
by her sincerity in the next episode. It
Yeah,
is,
it's
uh,
she. I just had the impression that she was without promising she was going to honor Granny's request. I just had
yeah.
that impression, but
So,
I just had to bring that up. That's all.
but before we get to the ending, what did you think of all the stuff, Leah? Because I kind of I glossed over a whole lot here.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, a lot going on. I mean, it's a fantastic fight scene, that's for sure, that we've had, so far. This whole sequence, going back to the temple, and it's yeah, it's amazing. And now we get back into the whole cloth fabric thing. This is where I start really wondering about the whole attacking people with cloth thing. I mean, I've seen it in other movies, but it just kind of struck me. I'm like, what is this? Is this supposed to
yeah,
represent some kind of weapon? And but you saying the
it's I
hardening the fabric and so on. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got that now. And
yeah
it's a very very visually striking technique, though. I
yeah
really liked it a lot.
I believe it's an internal energy thing. I'm pretty sure that's how
Yeah.
it's explained. And those gloves that she has on are like impervious to weapons. She puts on those gloves, and she also has I don't know if she used them in this fight in the show, but she has these bells, this like bells on her ribbon that she uses.
I don't recall this. Yeah.
We might see them down the road. There's some really cool weaponry throughout this series, and I like sort of the use of wire work in the series. They really lean on that heavily, and it gives it that dreamy sort of acrobatic. Even if the individual who's fighting isn't all that skilled, they're able to make it look good because the person is lifted above the air and can strike a pose, and it works. And I think that the fight choreography generally is pretty impressive throughout the show,
Yeah,
especially for a TV series.
Yeah, it's definitely doing the job. And Yang Guo is just an interesting character too. I'm really enjoying him as a character because it's like he is such a jerk a lot of the time, but you also feel sorry for him at the same time. And I feel like they're striking that balance perfectly.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you want it's like you wanted things to work out for him, but at the same time you know why people are really frustrated
Yeah.
with him a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, he really does get under people's skin. He's got a knack for it. They're going to advance. I don't know if it's in the next episode or the following up. I think it's in the next episode. We might get the Yangor when he's like 18. And when they do that, I'll be interested to see your reaction to sort of the characterization of the character at that point.
That's always a tricky
it's
move
one,
to make in a
yeah.
TV show.
Well, here's one thing I will say in preparation for that. Understand that this is a character with a trajectory who changes over time, and so he becomes he becomes a more powerful, serious hero by the end. But I've seen enough complaints of this initial depiction of Yangor by the actor in this movie, in this show, that just be prepared for it. He's sort of.
Oh, you're saying complaints about this version of it? People are complaining about, or the next character?
Yeah, the next actor, and
Okay.
not that I don't think that people were troubled by him throughout the show, but just when we first meet him, the note that he hits for the character is because you could watch. When I first watched this series, I didn't realize until deep into it how intelligent Yango was supposed to be. And in the books, it's very right away how intelligent he's supposed to be.
I feel like he is very smart in this series so far. I mean, he's very manipulative. It's like, yeah, he seems to be out of control and blah blah blah, but there is so I deal with my sister's kids a lot, so I'm used to like little kid manipulative psychology, and it's like he's very smart in the way. I mean, his goals and intentions aren't always smart, but his tactics are always very smart in what he's doing.
Well, and I feel like that's apparent with this first couple of episodes with the kid, but then when he's an adult, it's less clear because you'll see. We'll talk about it then.
Yeah,
because I'm also it's also been a while since I've seen this version of the show, so I don't want to maybe I'm mistaken, but I've also remember seeing critiques of it. But anyways, he goes back with Zhao Longnu to Ancient Tomb, and he kind of immediately takes to her. He's like not at all like she's still bossing him around, just like anybody else. But he calls her Gugu right away, and it just means auntie. So he's already got like a nickname for her the moment he walks in the tomb, and she tries to give him a stone bed. It's got like water dripping on it.
Oh, I know.
And he's like, I don't like this. So she says, okay, you can sleep in my room. And she takes her to her room, and she's got this jade bed that's really, really cold, and tells him to sleep on that. And eventually she gets him to do so. And then she places a rope across the wall and gets up on it and sleeps on that. And that's actually that's something that is in the book. That's their sleeping arrangement for like ages in the story. And so it's kind of like an iconic image, like her on the rope and him on the jade bed. But that jade bed is obviously very cold, but it's going to help him cultivate his internal energy is the idea. And so, but obviously they're definitely like an odd couple. Like she is very serious. She has very little interest in the emotional concerns that Yango has, and he is all over the map in terms of he's very fussy and fidgety, and so so it's an interest, and I don't think at this point in the show he actually becomes her disciple yet. I think he still hasn't yet been formally inducted into the sect, but we'll get that.
Yeah. I feel like watching these two so far, only had a couple of scenes of them together. My feeling is that so basically he's really good at needling people, and I feel like it's going to be kind of healthy for him to be around with someone where his needling. I get the impression there's just she just doesn't respond on the kind of emotional level that he can get away. I could be wrong.
No, you're
That's
right.
kind of my guess at the moment.
In fact, me and Kenny had some long discussions about this. But she so number one, she's lived in this tomb her whole life. She has no knowledge of the outside world. On top of that, she's mastering the Jade Maiden style, which requires that you're not supposed to feel emotions when you master this style. It's disruptive to the kung fu, and so. Between those two things, she tends to take people very, very literally. She doesn't really have a sense of the nuance of the outside world. Later in the story, she ventures in the outside world, and she sees some steamed buns at a vendor, and she just goes and grabs one because she has no idea how commerce works. So she's very naive.
Okay.
But she's very sort of disciplined and studious and focused on her martial arts training. But at the same time, she doesn't really care about the end results that much. She's happy to be, she's not obsessed with it in the way that there's another character in the story named Zhu Batong who has a lot of similarities to Zhao Longnu. And you remember Zhu Batong from the
Who's Zhu Batong?
He's the one who slept with the Emperor of Dali's concubine, and he was on. He was the old man that Guo Jing encountered on Peach Blossom Island when he was trapped.
Of course, I remember Zhu Batong.
We get more Zhu Batong.
Yeah.
It's a different actor,
good.
But
I was wondering about that. I was wondering if he'd come back again.
The fun thing about this story is you get closure with almost everybody of meaning in the previous story. So all these characters come back and you get really nice closing points for them. But she's very similar to him in that his whole defining feature as a character is he's obsessed with martial arts. Like that's all he cares about. He's like a martial arts nerd, and so she's similar to him in some ways, but in I think in an important way she's different in that he is like very obsessed with sort of the outcomes of his martial arts, and she doesn't seem to care as much about that. Like she's happy to not worry about the dealings of the martial world, and so I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but yeah. So I don't know. I guess that sort of leaves us at that's the 2 episodes. So thoughts on I don't know. What were your favorite characters so far? Like who stands out as
Oh, I mean, obviously, like I said, young Guo. I'm very, very interested in him so far. yeah, he is just a compelling character, which is, tricky to pull off with child characters for one thing.
Mm.
But I think they're hitting the perfect notes of getting him to be aggravating and, making you feel bad for the situation he's in. And yeah, Zhao Long Nu is definitely intriguing. We haven't got a lot of hers, but I like her emotional distance, and it's going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing those two characters interact a lot.
Yeah, we will definitely
And
get more of them. There's no doubt about that.
yeah, like I said, I liked what we saw of Guo Jing. I thought it was a good interpretation of the character based on what I know about him, and I agree with you. He feels a little more grounded and wiser than the young version, but it mentally connects to my feeling of the character. And yeah, I don't know what are some other characters you think are noteworthy, and I just if you want
I
to get
think
my
for
opinion on it.
me, Lee Mocho is probably my favorite character in the
Oh,
story,
sure, yeah,
because she's
she
so
made a huge
villainous.
impression.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's villainous, but she also has these moments like you see it in this episode or the first episode when she goes to strike. I think it's Lu Wuxuang, and she sees the handkerchief on her, and she's reminded of her former lover, and just the I don't know, just the pendulum swinging in this character when she goes between sort of her internal and again, it's very melodramatic, and
yeah,
it's very operatic in a way. It's not something you wouldn't see. You wouldn't buy this in like a modern romantic comedy. It wouldn't be a believable character in that kind of concept. But in
no,
here, where characters are not necessarily supposed to hit like 10 notes at a time, they're sort of more focused. And when she comes onto the scene, she sort of she embodies something, and so
yeah,
I like that. I like that she's this wrecking ball of vengeance that is fueled by a really simple desire for love. And it's actually like a very genuine, sincere kind of almost naive desire, but it, it it's something that I think that in sort of like modern movies we might tend to sort of dismiss and make fun of if we see that, but here it just really works. And
yeah, it works very well. I mean, yeah, I mean, when you're watching something like this, you kind of have to go with the genre conventions, and it fits perfectly in those.
well, it's everything together. It's not just that because there's the music playing, there's the atmosphere, there's the fact that she's like roaming the martial world with a fly whisk and severing people in half. And, it's and but the thing about her character that I like is she has interesting there are interesting constrictions on her character. There are certain things that she won't do. And so, like, you saw one of them where she won't directly go and confront Zhao Longnu, at least not yet. She wants to do it indirectly because, she says, like, I'm her senior disciple. It wouldn't be right for me to go in there and bully her. So I'm not gonna go and demand the Jade Maiden manual. And it's just kind of an interesting constraint. Some of the other constraints she's actually like very chaste. She's very one of her issues that she eventually takes with Zhao Longnu and Yangor is that because she believes that they've been living in the ancient tomb together and been doing things that they shouldn't be doing, she finds them incredibly shameful, and she's genuinely upset about it. So it's
Yeah,
I don't know, she's an interesting character for somebody who goes around killing so many people. But the other character I like is Granny Sun. Granny Sun.
Granny Sun was very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't give her a whole lot of time, but it was like her affection for Yang Gao, it came off very convincingly for as quickly as they had to set it up.
Yeah, because it's she's really only there for like 5 minutes. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
little more than that, but she's not on screen that long. But just the instant doting on Yangoa really works. The woman that played her I thought was very effective as sort of this caring granny character who also had a certain amount of power. I mean, she's not a big hero or anything, but she had like a strength to her that was impressive, and yeah, just just her sort of her defiance of the Taoists was that's a big part of this story is sort of in in at least in this one, not in the previous one, but in this one, Chuan's insect is not. Chuan's insect has seen better days, and
Yeah.
we will learn more about that as things unfold. But the people who are sort of not buying into their claims of being, I forget what they call them, the number one orthodox, most valiant school.
Yeah,
there's
some truth there.
Yeah, they might be right to suspect those claims. So.
Yeah, and Hao Detong was interesting too. The guy that kills Granny's son, his characterization was interesting. He's not in any way willing to commit suicide or anything over his sin. I don't know. It's. I mean, it's just they've got this. The whole cast is pretty compelling at this point. I'm really excited to see where this goes.
We'll definitely pick up on it next episode. We'll see episodes 3 and 4, and there are 40 episodes in total. So it's going to take us it's like going through the Babylon 5 series, or 41 episodes. We'll
shorter than that. It's not too bad, but yeah, I'm up for doing 3 episodes at a time, definitely.
Okay, so we'll try to do 3 episodes then by the next time, and again, I would point people to me and Kenny's reading of Return of Condor Heroes. I would absolutely point you to the translation available. I think the translator's name is Noodles. Is the version that I like, but if you just Google translation of Return of Condor Heroes, and you'll find the fan translations. It's available in its entirety, translated unofficially, but by fans into English, and it's well worth reading. I think at some point we might get official translations, but right now it's all fan translation. So we'll be back on also on Friday with New Dragon Inn, and we got other stuff going on this week, but there's just so much. Oh, I got something on Monday that people should look forward to. I won't say too much about it now, but we'll drop it on Monday, and just come and check us out.